As you heard, I'm Laura, and most of you probably know me. I'm the registered dietitian. So today's presentation is focused on the American Institute of Cancer Research's recommendations to reduce cancer recurrence risk for cancer survivors. These are the AICR's same recommendations for those without cancer to reduce their cancer risk. So basically, it's important for everybody. And we're going to start off with the AICR's 2 honorable mentions, and then we'll go into their recommendations to lower cancer recurrence risk. After that, I added a little part about how to incorporate these lifestyle recommendations into your daily life. The first honorable mention is to quit smoking or don't start smoking. We are all aware that smoking is harmful, but did you know that smoking is the leading cause of preventable death in the United States? It causes 90% of lung cancer deaths and 80% of deaths from COPD. Smoking increases the risk of heart disease because inhaling chemicals through smoking or secondhand smoke may cause cardiovascular disease because it damages blood vessels and can make them thicken and grow narrower. And smoking isn't just from, the harms from smoking isn't just from cigarettes or cigars, it's also from vaping and e-cigarettes, secondhand smoke. There's been recent changes to New York State's law about smoking marijuana. Is that harmful? We're unsure, but the National Institute of Health reports it does contain some of the same harmful chemicals and tar, similar to tobacco smoke. So it does raise concerns about smoking marijuana related to lung cancer and lung disease risk. The next honorable mention is avoiding excess sun exposure. As we're all pretty familiar, when you first started treatment, a nurse educated on always covering up the treatment site and making sure to prevent sun exposure. And so it's very important even now to wear a sunscreen with at least SPF of 30 or greater, and to reapply often, especially if you're swimming or you're sweating a lot from doing strenuous exercise. And to plan outdoor activities in the early morning or evening so you're not exposed to the sun during the peak hours. And always to check the day's UV index. If the UV index is high, maybe replace that outdoor activity with an indoor one. The first AICR recommendation begins at the beginning of life when a mother gives birth, is for mothers to breastfeed if they can and if they want to, is because breastfeeding may help to reduce mothers' chances of breast cancer. And any amount of breastfeeding is beneficial for the mother and the baby if it's partial, mostly, or exclusively. In today's age, there's becoming more places in public to breastfeed, such as workplaces, and I even saw a breastfeeding pod in an airport. So it's becoming more. There's more resources to support mothers who do choose to breastfeed. So now we're going to talk about nutrition, the foods we eat on a daily basis. The AICR recommends eating more plant-based whole foods in our daily diets. If you've ever heard the saying, eat the rainbow, it doesn't refer to Skittles or candy, but it refers to fruits and vegetables. It's because Each color has different antioxidants, different nutrients, different photochemicals, all beneficial nutrients that we need to help reduce our chances of disease, such as cancer, heart disease, obesity. Beans and lentils are a great source of heart-healthy, plant-based proteins. They're also rich in potassium, folate, and iron. When making a chili, half of the ground meat can be easily replaced by pinto or kidney beans. Also, whole grains have more nutrition than their white counterparts because they also include the nutrient-rich bran and germ, which are taking away in the refining process that creates the white starches. Whole grains include a variety of vitamins and minerals, such as niacin, magnesium, iron, selenium, folate, and zinc. Some examples of whole grains include barley, oatmeal, and popcorn. All of these plant-based whole foods are rich sources of heart-healthy fiber. Fiber helps to lower cholesterol, regulate bowel movements, and help protect against colon cancer. It is important to slowly increase fiber intake because a sudden large increase in fiber may lead to gas and GI distress. The United States Dietary Guidelines recommends trying to make half of your grain whole grains. And there are two plant-based foods that the AICR didn't include, but are good sources of heart-healthy nutrition. And those are nuts and seeds, like sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds. Since they are high in calories, try adding a small amount to oatmeal or salads. There are also foods that the AICR recommends eating less of, and it includes red meat, such as beef, pork, and lamb. These foods tend to be higher in saturated fats, which may increase risk for artery clogging heart disease. The AICR recommends limiting red meat to no more than 12 to 18 cooked ounces weekly. So if you're having a 12-ounce steak, that one meal meets your weekly limit for red meat. You can try replacing that with a smaller portion and pairing it maybe with a 3-bean salad. That will reduce the amount of saturated fat, but also increase the amount of heart-healthy fiber. And seafood is another heart-healthy substitution for red meat. Processed meats, such as bacon and sausage, hot dogs. The AICR also recommends limiting the consumption of these foods. If you're having an end of the summer barbecue, maybe instead of having a second hot dog, having a grilled corn on the cob instead. Also, eating less, the AICR recommends limiting processed foods, since these foods may increase our risk for cancer, heart disease, and obesity. We all know that fast food isn't a heart-healthy choice. The drive-through lines after work tend to be long. Instead of going through the drive-through, try going to the grocery store, picking up an already prepared meal or chicken and salad, or having easy to prepare foods at home, such as frozen ravioli and vegetables and jarred pasta sauce. Processed foods include candy, sugary cereals, and baked goods. Do you crave sweets? Have a piece of fruit first, and then have a smaller portion of dessert. Do you crave crunchy snacks after dinner? Try a smaller portion of chips and include some crunchy peppers or baby carrots. Right now, my kids love freeze-dried strawberries is because they have a crunch like chips and is naturally sweet to satisfy their sweet and crunchy cravings. There are also beverages to drink less. In addition to eating less processed foods, there are also beverages to drink less often. And the AICR recommends drinking less sugar-sweetened beverages. They contain added sugar and include soda, energy drinks, and juice blends. It's important to read the ingredient list. Try replacing a juice drink with 100% juice, which does not contain added sugar. And soda may be replaced with seltzer mixed with 100% juice. The AICR recommends avoiding alcohol, but if you do choose to include alcohol, to limit it to less than 1 serving a day, since it may increase risk of several cancers, including breast, head and neck, and esophagus. Maybe try a tea or coffee instead, which contains cancer-fighting agents. Now that we know the AICR's recommendation, what to include more frequently in our diet, and those to include less frequently in our diet, how do we apply that to a meal? And the plate on the left is from the AICR. They recommend having making two-thirds of the plate plant-based foods and limiting the other third to animal-based proteins if the person chooses to include them. And the middle plate is from the American Diabetes Association, and the last plate is from the US Dietary Guidelines, my plate. And what all of them have in common is that they're focused on a larger portion, the majority of the plate being from plant-based whole foods, and a smaller portion of animal-based foods. This also aligns with the #1 recommended lifestyle to reduce disease risk, which is the Mediterranean diet. It focuses on more plant-based foods with smaller occasional portions of animal foods. An important part of nutrition is not depriving ourselves from things that we want to eat and drink, but knowing how to include them in our diets in moderation, which for some foods means smaller portions and less frequently. But what about supplements? The AICR recommends not to use supplements for cancer prevention because they are not a substitution for a healthy lifestyle. Instead, they recommend whole foods such as fruits and vegetables because, as we discussed earlier, they contain multiple health benefits and multiple nutrients that are not really found in a pill. And as such, our philosophy as dietitians, nutrition professionals, the philosophy is always food first. But a healthy lifestyle doesn't just involve diet alone. It also includes physical activity. So let's watch this short video. Can you believe this? These runners are in between the ages of 75 to 99 years old. That's amazing. Like I'm a runner now, and I really hope that I can run in one of these races when I'm in my 80s and 90s. But do you know their secret? It's just keep moving. Stay physically active. Like them, physical activity, if possible, should be a key component in all of our lives. And that's why the AICR recommends aiming for at least 150 minutes of weekly physical activity. They also realize that not everybody is currently physically active. So starting out at 2.5 hours a week for somebody new to exercise may not be a realistic goal. But we'll discuss creating goals in a little bit and how to work up to it. But some ideas to start including physical activity is to park a little bit further away from the store. Or it could be take the stairs instead of the elevator. The motto is to start low and go slow. Maybe plan an after dinner walk. Walk around the block once after dinner. If that's too much, walk down to the corner and back. And over time, it'll become easier and you can walk farther. So breaking a big goal down into smaller goals is more realistic. Sometimes creating a goal, working towards, will help us become more physically active and include more exercise. Like for example, New York Proton Center is a local sponsor of the Zero Prostate Cancer 5K walk and a 1-mile walk. And we have a team that anybody can join, and it doesn't have to cost anything. And there are 2 distances: the 5K for probably those who walk, and 1 mile for maybe people who are new to walking. Or you can look for a local race or join a local walking group. The last AICR recommendation is to be a healthy weight by having a healthy lifestyle. And that healthy lifestyle includes what we talked about so far in this presentation. But how do I know if I'm a healthy weight? And there are 2 tools that we can use at home to help assess. The first one is using our weight and our height. There are body mass index calculators online that you can plug your weight and height into. The green box is a healthy weight for the height. And one thing to note is that if we have more years under our belts, we're towards our 70s or older, having a BMI that's maybe more aligned to 22, 23, 24 is going to be a lot better than is a good idea for those who have more decades under their belt. And for the yellow box and for the red box, it shows, okay, let's maybe use these AICR recommendations, and that those will to create goals, and that will help us to bring the BMI more towards a healthy weight. But BMI doesn't work for everybody. So I like to assess BMI in addition to waist circumference, because waist circumference is another screening tool that is used to evaluate disease risk, especially like heart disease, obesity. And having a waist circumference for men under 40 inches and non-pregnant women under 35 inches shows that they may have a reduced risk for some cancers and diabetes, sleep apnea. This is from the World Cancer Research Fund, and it shows how some of these AICR recommendations are translate to decrease or increase cancer risk. One thing with nutrition, though, is that it's very hard to study specific nutrients or specific foods, because even day to day, we eat different foods. We don't eat the same exact thing every day. And there aren't two people who eat the same diet all the time. So a lot of the evidence that we have in regards to food may be limited. But this shows that having alcoholic drinks and increased weight and increased BMI, weight for the height, and drinking mate, an Argentinian beverage, may increase, can increase the risk for cancers of the mouth, pharynx, and larynx. But having a diet high in non-starchy vegetables like carrots and tomatoes and string beans, broccoli, mushrooms, and having a healthy dietary pattern, as like we discussed in this presentation, may decrease the risk for these cancers. And same thing for lung cancer. Using high doses of beta-carotene, a vitamin A derivative in a supplement form, may actually increase the risk for lung cancer. But looking on the left, fruits, vegetables, foods containing carotenoids, and foods containing beta-carotene decrease risk. And what the foods that contain carotenoids, beta-carotene, vitamin C, isoflavones, these are all plant-based whole foods. And physical activity decreases risk. And then on the other side, there's some evidence suggestion that red meat, processed meat, and alcoholic drinks may increase risk. And those were things that we saw in the AICR recommendations that to limit their intake. So now we know what the AICR recommends to have a healthy lifestyle to reduce cancer recurrence risk. How do we start making these changes if or when we're ready to? And that's where SMART goals come in, because it'll break a big goal down into smaller, more attainable steps. And SMART goals contain 5 important components. The first is to be specific. It gives you, because it gives you a concrete plan, so you know exactly what you're going to do to achieve it. Second is measurable. It tells you, how do you know if you reached your goal or not? Third, it is attainable. Is this goal feasible? Do I have the ability and resources to do it? Do I have recipes that I like? Do I have the cooking utensils? Does my supermarket have these ingredients? Do I have the time to do this. Fourth, is it realistic? Is this a change I can do over the next 1, 5, 10 years? Because when making lifestyle changes, it's important to make sure you can do it a long time. If you can't make the change over a long time, then it's probably a fad diet. And lastly, time bound. How long am I going to give myself to work on this goal? How often will I do it? If I didn't achieve it, after why? And then we go back, revisit, and make another goal. So let's look into an example. And this is what really helps to make these guidelines a little bit more achievable and relatable to your daily diet. This is how we tailor it to each individual. So example 1, person A likes to eat red meat and potatoes every day. They may eat 1 to 2 vegetables a week, but after watching a food documentary, they want to stop eating red meat. So here are 2 goals. 1, starting this weekend, I will stop eating meat. Or 2, each week, I will replace 1 red meat meal or dish with fish. I will do this for 2 months and then reassess. So the second one is a SMART goal because 1, it's specific, it has the details. It makes it a little bit more realistic. Do you have seafood recipes? Do you, and it's not as overwhelming. Maybe finding 1 recipe compared to 2 or 3 is a lot easier. It has a time frame. I'm going to do this for 2 months. Okay. And it may be realistic for this person because they might have the time to cook this 1 meal. I know for myself, I made a similar goal, trying to get my family eat less red meat. I said on the weekend, every weekend, I'm going to cook beans or lentil recipes. Didn't work out very well because I didn't have a large amount of bean or lentil recipes. And it wasn't really realistic for me because I had dried beans. I didn't know how to cook them. I used to use canned beans. So after 2-3 weeks, I said, okay, stop. This is not working for me. Why? I said, I need to break it down. 2 days is too much. Every weekend, I'm going to do 1 meal. And that was a much more realistic goal because I had time to do that 1 recipe, and then I could think about and prepare ahead by soaking the beans and preparing it. And then in another month, I'm going to reassess how I'm doing, and I'm going to create a new goal if I want to do another one. Example number 2, person B is sedentary. They like to watch movies and TV shows in their free time. And their friend recently finished their first marathon, a 26.2-mile race. Now they're inspired to run a marathon. Which goal should they pick and why? So starting this week, I will run, walk, alternate for 20 minutes, 3 times a week for the first month. So they could run a minute, walk 2 minutes, run a minute, walk 2 minutes for 20 minutes. Or starting today, I will run for 1 hour every day. The first one is a SMART goal because it breaks it down into smaller steps and it tells them exactly what they need to do. Once they're going to reassess in 1 month, if they were able to achieve that goal, maybe they can increase the time. Maybe instead of 20 minutes, it'll be 30 minutes. Or maybe they'll walk less and run more within that 20 minutes. So as they complete their goals or they miss their goals, they'll go back, tailor it to what they're able to do and to their abilities. Any questions?
So please remember, if you do have questions, we'd love to answer them, and they can go right into the Q&A feature, and Laura will answer them in the order that they're received. Thanks. We'll give it a couple of minutes if any questions come to mind. In the meantime, this is recorded, and I'll make sure it's available to everyone who signed up for this webinar. And we look forward to having some more programs for our alumni network in the near future. If you have an idea for a program that you would like to have, please email me. My name is Melissa, and you received information about the webinar from me. And I'm happy to hear all of your suggestions about programs that you'd like to see, whether they're virtual or for future programs in person. Oh, okay. Here's our first question for Laura. Is it healthy to eat farm-raised seafood? That's a great question.
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, that's a great question. There's so much that goes into nutrition, and sustainability of food resources too is a very important part, because if we over deplete something, then we won't have it in the future. So for me personally, I buy either farm raised or wild raised, depending on the sale price, which one's cheaper. But I think having seafood is a great heart healthy source of nutrition.
Thank you. Let's see if there are any more questions. Actually, I have a question for Laura. So if someone is looking for recipes, are there particular websites that you might recommend? Like I, for example, get a lot of my recipes off of the New York Times. I'm a subscriber, and it includes their whole recipe thing, where you can create your own recipe box, store the recipes, mark if you've cooked them, and see comments from others who've made the same recipe. But is there anything that you would recommend, Laura, for good recipes?
There isn't one recipe source that I recommend or I use myself. When I choose recipes for my own self, I always think, do I have these ingredients on hand? And does it not take a lot of time to prepare? Is it focused on, does it have a lot of the plant-based foods, like the vegetables and the beans or the grains? And that's how I choose mine. But I don't. But New York Times is a great source, and Mark Bittman is fantastic.
Yes, yeah. I don't think I've ever made anything of his that was bad.
Yeah, no, so, yeah, you're right. Yeah, because sometimes online it's a hit or miss.
Right.
But, yeah.
Okay. Good. All right. Well, if we don't have any more questions, we'll wrap up the webinar for today. Again, you'll be receiving an email from me with the link, and I'd also love you to have the actual PowerPoint presentation as well, if you just prefer to read through it. We'll get that out to you. It may take till right after Labor Day, but it's my intention to do that. So thank you so much for joining us today, and glad you could be part of this first program for our Patient Alumni Network. Oh, is there a new question? New question. Wait. Okay. Okay. It was just a comment thanking us for the webinar, and this person would like to take the next step. I
Okay.
appreciate that.
Yeah. If you guys have questions or you want to take that next step and you need a little bit of you want to talk with me, you can email me at my email here, and then I can we can set up a time to call.
Okay. So we're good for today. Thank you, Laura. This was terrific. Lots of good information, and hope you all enjoy the long weekend. Take care. Thanks.
Bye.